Thanks very much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here, particularly at this particular moment when there's some things to celebrate, small and large. First of all, this wonderful book, publication of Humanly Possible, a great event in the history of the organization, and I think maybe I'll have a boost to people's recovery when they get a chance to wrap their minds around this book. Congratulations to Kathleen for putting it together editorially, and to Robert for putting it together productively in terms of getting the book manufactured. Well, let's give them a big hand. And I think it's also wonderful that we finally broke through the, shall I say Berlin Wall or Iron Curtain or whatever, that kept us out of Dear Abby. Finally broke through. And we got mentioned in Dear Abby. And there, the credit, I understand, is due to Byron, who wrote her unthinkable letter on paper with an envelope and a stamp on it, and mailed it to her. And that seemed to be the way to reach her, or the committee that impersonates her. So, Byron, thank you. And I also want to greet the surviving members of the founding convention or conference, the Constitutional Conference of LifeRing in Florida in 2001. Chet Gardner and Craig Wallace. Stand up, you guys. Craig, you were there, weren't you?
No, I wasn't there. You weren't there.
This is what memory is. Let's hear it. It's really wonderful to have this kind of continuity in the organization. And it's even wonderful that I don't know most of the people, or by name, I don't know most of the people in this room. That is a great success story, that is the case. When I started this journey of sobriety about 26 years, 8 months ago, tomorrow, I had no idea where this would lead me. The least of all, that I would be standing in front of you at the Hacker Dojo in the heart of Silicon Valley. The whole journey has just been most amazing, and the most amazing thing about it in some ways is that I'm alive. If I had not taken that step back 26 years and odd months ago, I'm pretty sure I would be pushing up daisies by now, because I was very much on the decline, on the edge of a cliff there. And now, even though I'm of advanced age and at this advanced age, you're always at the edge of the cliff. I'm more healthy at the edge of the cliff than I was then. To coin a phrase, I was so much older than, younger than right now. I think it's important that we're here in Silicon Valley, because there is a sort of a big clash brewing, if you like, between the younger generation, or not between the younger generation, but in the younger generation of people in Silicon Valley, as far as alcohol and drug consumption is concerned on the one hand, and as far as religiosity is concerned on the other hand. As you probably know, if you've been reading some of the polls that come out, the younger generation of Americans is the least religious generation that there has been since these numbers were ever measured. Fewer and fewer people are going to church, or you know, they may still believe in angels or what, but it doesn't have any serious impact, or had much less of a serious impact on their lives. And people are much less hesitant to say, no, I'm not religious, I'm not interested in that stuff. People are much more secular-minded than they were even 26 years ago when I started. So that's very important, because that means that the future audience for a secular sobriety approach is large and vast and growing, much more than it ever was. And at the same time, I got to say, the alcohol industry has done a bang-up job of promoting its product to this generation. I don't see among the millennials or recent millennials much much interest in sobriety per se, or in the values of sobriety. In fact, I see just the opposite. I'm not that deep into the culture. What I get is mostly from movies, but you remember the movie Social Network? Is that the name of it? Where the Zuckerberg character is hiring code writers, and they puts up a contest where these 6 or 8 top students are sitting around the table coding away like crazy, and every 10 minutes they have to down a shot of hard liquor while they're coding, and sort of the last man left standing gets the job. And then you say to yourself, what madness is it to promote the idea that you could do better coding when you're drunk? But part of the culture seems to be that people are sitting in front of their 4 screens with a pitcher of martinis at the side and keep drinking while they're coding, and that seems to be into the culture. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like I say, I get this mostly from movies. I'm not a Silicon Valley native. I don't know where everything's like that. No, okay, right. So these two things are going to come together one of these days, because the people, the younger people that are doing all that drinking, they too are going to wake up. And they too are going to realize, hey, wait a minute. This is not the answer. I really don't code better when I'm, the blood alcohol level of 2.5, and I really need to stop drinking. That's going to happen to them, like it's happened to previous generations. At some point, hopefully earlier rather than later. I mean, I was 52 when I finally woke up. Hopefully they will wake up a little earlier. They're going to want to get sober, and they're going to want support, a support system. And that's when the non-religious aspect of LifeRing is going to be really attractive to them. So if I can, look at my crystal ball and say what the future of LifeRing is, I'd say the future of LifeRing is pretty darn good. It's pretty darn good. That we are with the demographic trends. The demographic trends are on our side. And that's really important, particularly in this time when in so many other ways, let me not talk politics at all, but in so many other ways, the country is sliding backwards into the dark ages. Humanly possible. Well, I think that's so key to what LifeRing is about. And to say that we have it within ourselves, the power to get clean. And that is so disruptive to the prevailing ethos, to the prevailing metaphysic of human psychology and of recovery in particular. I mean, it started in the 5th century AD with the Bishop of Hippo, North Africa, Augustine was his name, himself a heavy drinker and womanizer and liar and whatnot, and an opportunist who got himself elected bishop of the Christian church in Hippo, and wrote a big book, one of whose main themes was that because of the original sin that Eve, would you know it, blaming everything on Eve, the original sin of Eve eating that apple in paradise and getting them thrown out, because of that original sin, all of humanity is tainted, and when the babies are born, they are tainted with that original sin, and so that as a result, people don't have it within them to make the correct choices, to make right choices. There was another philosophy that said God granted us the power to make choices. No, no, no. That's not the Catholic Church doctrine. God did not grant us the power to make choices. God alone makes choices for us. And so Augustine of Hippo, who then became Saint Augustine, laid down the law that recovery, sobriety, can come only by the grace of God. And And that's been the Christian ethos in at least the Western churches. The Eastern church doesn't buy it. The Christian ethos for how many centuries since the fifth? A lot. And so the culture of looking at alcohol and alcoholism is built around this old Christian idea that we are tainted with original sin, that only by the grace of God can we get clean and sober. And that's built into the traditional algorithm of recovery, which you all know what I'm talking about. It's to tell us in so many different ways, with so many different adjectives, that we're no damn good. We are powerless, insane, amoral, danger to others, clueless as to what our path is, and so on. It's a list, this algorithm is a list of beating us up, of reinforcing the negative views of alcohol, of alcoholics and other addicts that is prevailing in the old Christian culture. And so many of us have internalized that. You know, like slaves in the old days internalized the slave mentality and began to look at themselves as not worthy, as not real humans, as deserving punishment and so forth. The way that gay people, before the gay liberation movements, looked at themselves as weird and substandard and damaged and mentally defective and so forth. All these negative images that people internalize to reinforce and assume the negative stereotypes that society lays on. And that's so damaging to recovery. If you believe, and I think every alcoholic at one point or another, I certainly speak for myself, believe at some point that I can't get sober. And there are times when I said it to myself every day or even every hour, no, I can't get sober. It's impossible. I don't have the power to get sober. And we believe that, and we believe what terrible people we are. We are the POS at the center of the universe. All those thoughts are disabling. They are crippling. They are they kill our struggle to become clean and sober. And that's where LifeRing is such a wonderfully disruptive force. I mean disruptive in the sense of challenging these stale old assumptions, challenging an algorithm that's older than Hollerith cards. It's older than Fortran, it's older than CPM. And LifeRing comes along and says, no, there are other ways, there's another approach, there's other syllogism. And to say that within us, not outside in some imaginary realm, some guardian angel or some other imaginary creature, but within us, there is another self that's not the alcoholic self, but a self that wants to get clean and sober. There's a self within us that is not ill, that is not affected by illness, that wants to live, that wants to throw off the shackles of addiction. There's a self within us that wants life, and it fights the other self, the alcoholic self, the self that is married to death, leads us to death. If we listen to it and don't argue with it, it will kill us. Don't we know that? Don't we know people who have died from alcoholism and drug addiction? Sometimes when I talk in groups, I ask people, how many people do you know that have died from alcoholism and drug addiction? And the hands go up. We put it on the board, we number, we put them down. How many there are? Sometimes like 50, 60, 80 people that people know that have died from alcoholism and drug addiction because they listened to their addict self. They didn't listen to their sober self. And part of the reason they didn't listen to their sober self is because nobody ever told them that there was a sober self inside of them. Nobody ever approached them with the attitude that, hey, you're not just an alcoholic, if by that you mean you're just a person who drinks and slides and lies and does all the bad things that alcoholics do. That's not the whole of you. There's another part inside of you that wants to get rid of that, that wants to fight that wants to rise up against that death part inside of you, that wants life. And so nobody ever tells them that they have a sober self inside. Then they're very likely to slide off and drop and be gone. And so that's an important thing that LifeRing does, a very, very important thing, is to counter the pessimistic, oppressive paradigm about the powerlessness of alcoholics and other addicts. To counter that and say, no, alcoholics are not just alcoholics. Alcoholics, if they are alive, have a clean and sober self inside of them. The proof that you have it is the fact that you're alive. If you just had an alcoholic self, an addict self, and listened to what the alcoholic addict self told you, it always tells you what? It tells you drink, use, drink, use, drink, more, don't stop, keep going. And if that's all you listen to, you would be dead. But you don't. Even when you're in your addiction, you're using, there's a part of you that says, wait a minute, whoa, let's kind of stop and hold back here at this point, because there's still tomorrow, and there's still some things we need to do, and there's still some things we need to cover up, or whatever the reasons may be. But there's a brake, not just an accelerator, there's a brake in your car, and you step on that. That means, however hidden it may be, that you have a sober self inside of you. Now, what LifeRing meetings do, or what LifeRing philosophy does, is to raise that up to consciousness. Yes, you have a sober self. The fact that you drag your rear end into this room indicates that you have a clean and sober self which has control of your leg muscles enough to drag you into this room, because you could be somewhere else drinking. But no, your sober self said to your addict self, shut the F up. We're going to go to this meeting. So your sober self has won a victory by being here. And then in our meetings, what do? We shut down the addict self in the meetings. You don't get to talk addict talk in the meetings. You don't get to compare notes as to where the best weed is, or what your favorite drink is, or your favorite bar to go to, or where to buy the best heroin or whatever. We don't talk that kind of talk there. We talk sober talk. We talk recovery talk. We talk about the success that we've had in staying sober last week. Or if we didn't, we talk about the success we had in coming back to the meeting and getting past the relapse that we suffered. And so it's our sober mouths that are talking. Our sober brain is talking through our sober mouth, through the sober ears in other people, making the connection, and vice versa, with the crosstalk in our meetings. So that if I've talked to you as a sober person, appealing to the sober self inside of you, you respond with your sober self to my sober self. And we make those connections. And those connections are what empowers our sober self. It's those human connections with other sober people that makes our sober self stronger and gives our sober self the confidence and the wisdom and the strength to shut down the addict self, to tell the addict self, I want to hear from you. I don't want to do what you want to do. I want to stay clean and sober. And this battle goes on in the head of the addicted person in recovery all the time. And speaking for myself anyway, even after more than 25 years clean and sober, I still occasionally have the little voice inside of me, like I'm watching a program on TV and people are drinking in a certain way with certain expressions. I say, whoa, get that out of my brain. And what works for me when I have that kind of thing is that what worked for me when I quit smoking, I went, exhale sharply through the nose. Like I want that that smell out of my lungs. And that also works for me when I have thoughts in my brain, sneaking thoughts in my brain. It may not work for everybody, but it works for me. That shuts down the voice of the ad itself. That helps. So, humanly possible. Well, humanly possible, that's a profound truth. It is humanly possible. But it's not humanly inevitable either. To say that something is possible doesn't mean that it has to happen, that it will always happen. It means that in order to make it happen, to turn the possible into the actual, turn the possible into the real, there's work to do. And I'm not just talking about the internal work that we have to do in terms of going to meetings and participating in crosstalk, educating ourselves about addiction, talking to our friends and all of that. I'm talking about the work that's required to build an organization that carries the message of humanly possible to those who need to hear it. And that kind of work, well, that kind of work is what people in this room and elsewhere do. To that extent, I want to give a shout out to the LifeRing Board of Directors, every member of it, and the regional rep or whatever the other structure there is, and to each and every convener, LifeRing in this room or everywhere in the world, who do the work of turning the possible into the actual, the potential into the real. That work is what saves lives, what rebuilds lives, what creates a new beginning for so many people. And so let's give all of us a big round of applause and thanks for the work that's done to turn humanly possible into humanly real.